My name's Eli. I'm 34. You could probably say I've always been the responsible sibling. Not the favorite, not the rebel, not the golden child. Just the one who showed up on time, paid my bills, and remembered everyone's birthdays. I work in finance, live alone, and don't make a fuss about much. My family is loud, close-knit in that performative way, and very good at pretending everything is perfect while sweeping real problems under the rug. I've always been sort of adjacent, present, involved, but never truly embraced. The kind of person you invite to weddings but never ask to be in the photos. Growing up, my brother Mason was the star. Charismatic, reckless, always getting himself into some kind of trouble, but somehow he always landed on his feet. He had a smug charm my parents devoured like candy. Even when he dropped out of college, blew through 2 jobs, and ended up moving back home at 28, they defended him as if he were the second coming of Einstein. I, on the other hand, paid my own way through school, held down the same job for over a decade, and even helped cover part of their mortgage when Dad's hours were cut. None of that ever seemed to matter, at least not enough to earn me a seat at the metaphorical head of the table. Still, I never let it get to me. Or at least, that's what I told myself. I kept my head down, sent the checks, replied to texts, showed up for holidays, and smiled through the small jabs disguised as jokes. Eli, you're so serious. Loosen up, man. It's just a party. Oh, we figured you'd be busy. You're always working. I took it in stride, quietly hoping that if I just kept showing up, one day I'd be seen as part of the family, not just the one funding it from the background. That illusion shattered last fall. It began with a dinner. Mason had just gotten engaged to a woman named Brooke, who my mom had already declared an absolute angel. My parents decided to throw a big celebratory dinner at a swanky rooftop restaurant downtown, not the kind of place they usually could afford, which in hindsight should have been my first warning. A few weeks before, I got a call from Mom. "Eli, sweetheart," she said in that syrupy tone she uses when she wants something, "we'd love it if you could make it to Mason and Brooke's engagement dinner. It's going to be such a special night." Of course, I agreed immediately. "Just send me the details," I said. Then, in a lower voice, she added, "And if it's not too much trouble, we were hoping you might help with the reservation. Just to hold it. We'll pay you back." Obviously, I should have known that "we'll pay you back" meant I'd never see that money again, but I agreed anyway. I called the restaurant, booked a private space for 20 people, and gave them my card for the deposit. I didn't mind. Not really. It was Mason's night. Maybe, just maybe, this time I'd feel like I truly belonged. The night of the dinner, I arrived at 7 o'clock sharp. I was in a dark navy suit, a freshly pressed shirt, and new cufflinks I'd been saving. I brought a nice bottle of champagne for the couple and even printed a custom card with their initials. When I reached the rooftop, the hostess gave me a small nod and directed me toward the private section. I took a breath and walked in. The space was beautiful. String lights overhead, floral centerpieces on every table, a soft jazz band playing in the corner. And there they were, my parents, Mason, Brooke, her family, and a few friends, all holding drinks, laughing, talking, clinking glasses. I smiled and walked over, expecting at least a nod of recognition. Instead, Mason turned to me with that familiar smug grin. "Oh, hey," he said, barely glancing at the champagne in my hand. "Glad you made it." Then he pointed toward a fold-out chair by a trash bin. "No less," he added. "Sorry, this table's for family only. But there's a spot for you right over there." I blinked. I thought he was joking. I looked at Mom, who gave me that tight-lipped smile she uses when she doesn't want to get involved. Dad chuckled awkwardly and raised his glass. Brooke didn't even look up, and then, as if on cue, a few people laughed. I stood there too long. I wanted to say something, anything, but my throat closed up, my ears burned. I felt 13 again, left out of a cousin's wedding photo because I didn't fit the aesthetic. So I walked to the chair, set my bottle on the floor, and sat down alone. I didn't even take my coat off. The waiter asked if I was with the party. I nodded silently. He didn't question further, just handed me a glass of water and moved on. I sat there for almost 2 hours as they laughed, toasted, and opened gifts. I watched Mason give a long speech about how lucky he was to be surrounded by his closest people. I watched Mom tear up when Brooke called her the best future mother-in-law a girl could ask for. No one asked if I wanted to order. Eventually, dessert arrived, an elaborate layered cake with edible gold flakes. The band played a slow tune, the sun dipped below the skyline, and I realized no one had looked my way for the past 30 minutes. Then the check came. I watched the waiter approach their table with a little leather folder. He paused, looked around, then glanced at the credit card on file. My card. I heard myself think. He took a few steps toward me. Excuse me, sir, he said quietly. The total for the event is $3,218. Should I run the same card for the final amount? Everyone at the table turned. Mason raised an eyebrow. Oh yeah, he said casually. Eli's got it. I smiled calmly, measured. My voice steady. Not my table, I said, just loud enough for everyone to hear. I was told this was for family only. Silence fell so sharp it felt like the air had split in half. My brother's mouth opened slightly. Mom frowned, confused. Dad straightened in his chair. Brooke's dad furrowed his brow. The waiter hesitated. Sir, you made the reservation, he said. I did, I nodded. And I paid the deposit. But I'm not with them. I'm over here at the side table. I stood slowly, picked up my coat, and nodded toward the trash can, apparently my rightful place. You could almost hear the collective thud of jaws hitting the floor. For a second, no one moved. The waiter held the bill awkwardly, like it was radioactive. Mason looked like someone had slapped him with a fish. Mom's eyes narrowed, flicking between me and the check, trying to figure out how this had slipped past her. Wait, Eli, she said, her voice low and slightly shaky. What are you doing? I shrugged. Following the seating chart, Mom. Mason said this table was for family only. I assumed that meant I wasn't included. I didn't eat. I didn't drink. I wasn't welcome. So I won't be paying. Don't be ridiculous, Mason snapped, his smirk cracking into something uglier. It's just a joke, man. Lighten up. You always take things so personally. The room went quiet. Even the jazz band seemed to taper off into an awkward hum. All eyes were on me, and for the first time in years, I wasn't shrinking beneath them. Yeah, I said slowly. That's the problem. You think everything's a joke as long as it's at someone else's expense. Brooke looked confused, as if she was only now realizing something real was happening. Her father, a stiff man in a blazer who had barely spoken all night, shot Mason a sharp look. You invited this man to your engagement dinner and sat him next to the trash can? He asked incredulously. Mason scoffed and glanced at my mom for backup. She straightened in her seat, giving a tight, practiced smile. Let's not blow things out of proportion, she said. Eli is just being dramatic. He's always been sensitive. I almost laughed. That was her go-to line. Always had been. He's just sensitive. He's just tired. He's just overreacting. Any excuse to avoid admitting that something cruel had happened and that they had allowed it. The waiter cleared his throat. I'm sorry to interrupt again, but the restaurant needs to process the bill before we close the tab on the private space. If the card on file won't be used, I'll need an alternate. Silence. I turned and started walking toward the elevator. That's when my dad finally spoke. Eli, come on. You've already paid for half. You might as well just finish it. I stopped cold. That sentence, might as well, snapped something inside me. I turned back. You're right, Dad. I did pay the deposit. I even called 3 restaurants to find one with a rooftop view like Mason wanted. I picked the date around his football schedule. I ordered custom floral arrangements because Mom said fake flowers would look cheap in the photos. I paid the $500 non-refundable deposit without blinking, and I showed up on time, alone, in a suit, to support my brother. I took a step closer, lowering my voice but loud enough to be heard. And what did I get in return? A folding chair next to a garbage bin and a "sorry, family only." I turned to Mason. So now you get to figure it out. You and your real family. Mason's face flushed red, creeping up his neck. He stood, trying to puff himself up, but it only made him look ridiculous. You're making a scene, he said. No, I replied. I'm drawing a line. I walked away, not even bothering with the elevator. I took the stairs, every step pounding with adrenaline and disbelief that I had actually done it. Outside, the night air hit me like a slap, sharp and bracing. I loosened my tie and kept walking. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I wasn't going back. I thought that would be the end of it. A bold exit, a few awkward apologies later, maybe a half-hearted attempt to brush it under the rug. But I didn't know how deep the consequences would go. Later that night, long after I got home, still in my suit, still holding the unopened bottle of champagne like a ghost limb, my phone lit up. First, a text from Mason. Dude, seriously, you couldn't have just paid the check and talked to me after. Then one from Mom. You embarrassed us in front of Brooke's entire family. Was that your goal? Revenge. And then a call from an unknown number. It was Brooke. Hi, she said, her voice quieter than I'd ever heard it. I know we don't really talk, but can I ask you something? Sure, I said cautiously. Did you really pay for everything? The deposit, the flowers, all of it. I paused. Yeah. There was silence on the other end. Then they told my dad you offered it, that it was your idea. That stopped me cold. I never offered. I did not, I said slowly. They asked, she said. I said yes. I didn't expect anything back, but I definitely didn't do it for show. Brooke sighed. Well, my dad's furious. He thought you volunteered as a kind gesture, but now he's saying he wouldn't have agreed to the restaurant if he'd known it was being paid for by someone they basically shoved in the corner. I didn't say anything, he said. She continued. Mason and your parents made him look like a fool. Not calling to get involved, she added quickly. I just thought you should know. I thanked her and we hung up. But the fallout had only just begun. Over the next few days, things escalated faster than I expected, and not in the way my family probably anticipated. It started with the group chat. The big family thread that usually lit up around birthdays and holidays with recycled gifts, blurry food pics, and aunt-approved Happy Friday messages. I hadn't heard a peep since the night of the dinner, but suddenly it roared back to life. Mom, Eli, we need to talk. Call me when you have a minute. Mason, you seriously messed things up with Brooke's family. You owe us a fix. Dad, this is getting out of hand. Just apologize and let's move on. I didn't reply. It wasn't just about the chair. It wasn't even about the bill. It was everything that came before. Years of being the emergency contact, the designated driver, the backup wallet. And now that I'd finally said no, they didn't know what to do with me. What made it worse, or better, depending on how you look at it, was that Brooke's father apparently wasn't the type to take humiliation lightly. From what I gathered through a mutual friend of Mason's, a guy named Trent who'd always treated me better than most of them, Mr. Whitaker had a meltdown the night after the dinner. He'd paid for Brooke's private schooling, helped her start her marketing firm, and had gone out of his way to plan a smooth, elegant engagement season, only to find the groom's side lied about who paid for the venue, treated their own family member like trash, and then stuck him with half the drinks after I refused to cover the rest. According to Trent, Whitaker said something at brunch the next day. If this is how they treat their own blood, what happens when you marry into it? Ouch. The ripple effects hit Mason like a freight train. Wedding planning was on pause. Brooke had retreated to her condo for a mental reset. The Pinterest boards vanished. My mom, in full damage control mode, sent me a long email. Not a text, not a voicemail, an actual email. Subject line: please. The body was 5 paragraphs of sugar-coated manipulation, all about how she never meant to hurt me, how she hadn't realized I felt excluded, and how it would mean so much to the family if I'd just be willing to sit down with Mason and smooth things over. But nowhere in the letter did she say the word sorry. Just we didn't realize. You misunderstood. Let's not let one silly night destroy the bond we've built. I stared at that last line for a while. What bond was she talking about? The bond where I drove 3 hours on Christmas Eve to deliver gifts because Mom said Mason wasn't in the right headspace to shop? Or the bond where I canceled my trip to Spain because Dad needed surgery and they couldn't afford a home nurse? Or the bond where I co-signed their second car, the same car Mason borrowed and never returned? I let the email sit. I didn't reply. 2 days later, my Aunt Karen, Mom's sister, called me. That surprised me. She wasn't exactly warm, but sharp. A non-nonsense businesswoman running her own interior design firm, always radiating quiet judgment. Eli, she said, I heard about the dinner. Of course you did, I said, trying to keep the sarcasm out of my voice. I'm not calling to scold you, she said quickly. I just want to say, about time someone shook the tree. That caught me off guard. She sighed. Look, I know your parents. Always brushing things under the rug. Always pretending everything's perfect. But they've leaned on you too much for too long. And Mason, he's always gotten away with treating you like a side character. I appreciate that, I said quietly. But why now? Because now the Whitakers are involved, she said dryly. And your mom's panicking. She called me yesterday, asking if I'd be willing to talk some sense into you. I raised an eyebrow. And what did you say? I told her you didn't need sense, Karen said. You needed space. Maybe it's time they learned to function without using you as scaffolding. That was the first time I felt like someone in my family actually saw me. Not as a checkbook, not as a punching bag, just as a person. Later that night, I got another text. From Mason. Mason, bro, Brooke's dad just canceled the deposit on the wedding venue. Said we're not aligned in values. Fix this now. Can you help me? No. I'm sorry. Just fix this. And that's when I realized he still didn't get it. He still thought I was a tool in his toolbox, a pressure valve, a wallet with a heartbeat. So, I decided to finally fix something, but not the way he meant. That night, I logged into the shared account I'd set up a year ago, the one Mason had used temporarily while he was unemployed. The one he never closed, but that still had his gym membership and Spotify linked. I quietly moved the remaining funds into a new private savings account I'd started. Not much, just a couple thousand, but it was mine, funds I'd left untouched out of some vague sense of brotherly loyalty. Then I called the bank and closed the joint line entirely. The next morning, Mason called 4 times in a row. When I finally picked up, his voice was frantic. What did you do? I didn't say anything. Bro, I have a date with Brooke tonight. I was going to take her to that place she likes. And my card's bouncing. It says the account doesn't exist. I know, I said. I closed it. You what? You can't just, I can't. I can, I said calmly. And I did. You told me I wasn't family, remember? You don't get to use my money if I'm not even allowed at the table. He stammered, then switched tactics. Come on, man. Don't do this. You're jealous. Admit it. You've always hated that I got the attention. Now you're just throwing a tantrum because Brooke's dad took my side. I laughed. Actually laughed. Oh, Mason, you really think he's on your side? Silence. Then I said, don't worry, man. You'll figure something out. You always do. Maybe ask Mom to open a line of credit in your name again. Or maybe Brooke's dad can teach you how to stand on your own. And I hung up. I don't know what Mason did after that, but a few hours later, my phone buzzed again. Not from him, but an email from Brooke. Subject line, I think we need to talk. I stared at it for a while before opening it. The subject line felt like a precursor to something big, something I wasn't sure I was ready for. But curiosity and a strange sense of closure pushed me to click. The email was longer than I expected. Polite, personal, formal, yet clearly unraveling. She started by saying she understood how awkward the dinner had been, that she hadn't realized how I'd been treated until everything came crashing down. She admitted she hadn't been paying attention. She was too caught up in planning the perfect night to see the full picture. But her father had been furious. Not just about the financial deception, but about principle. If they can publicly humiliate someone who financially and emotionally supported the entire night, she wrote, then I need to seriously reconsider who I'm marrying into. Brooke didn't mince words. Mason had downplayed everything at first, calling it a minor misunderstanding. But once her dad showed her screenshots of the restaurant invoice and requested a breakdown from the manager, the lies began to unravel. Mason told her I insisted on paying, that I didn't want to sit at the main table because I was introverted, that I left early for a work emergency. But after she spoke with the waiter herself, yes, I called the restaurant, the story fell apart completely. Then came the part no one expects. I ended the engagement last night, she wrote. I blinked. She explained it wasn't just the dinner. The whole situation pulled back the curtain on behaviors she'd previously excused, the casual entitlement, the way Mason talked about me behind my back, the way her concerns were minimized. He kept saying I was overreacting. But honestly, she wrote, you're the only one who reacted with any dignity. She ended the email with a short note. I'm not writing this to pit myself against Mason or drag you into drama. I just wanted you to know I see it now, and I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner. I sat for a long time rereading it, not because I doubted her, but because I wasn't used to being believed. The next few weeks were oddly quiet. The family group chat went silent completely. Mason called twice more, but when I didn't answer, he stopped. I learned through the grapevine that he'd moved back in with her parents. Brooke returned the ring. Her dad sent official cancellation notices to the wedding venue and vendors. Some of Mason's old friends disappeared entirely, apparently riding his coattails to Brooke's connections. I thought that would be it. Silence. Then, one Sunday morning, a knock on my door. It was Mom. She stood on my porch in a long cardigan, holding a Tupperware container of lasagna like a peace offering. Her eyes were puffy, her makeup thin. I didn't say anything, just opened the door a crack and waited. I brought you dinner, she said. I didn't reach for it. I just wanted to talk. No excuses. That part surprised me. I let her in. She sat at the kitchen table like she used to when I was a kid. Same nervous fingers, same forced smile, but this time, no passive aggressiveness, no you're just tired, no he didn't mean it. She cleared her throat. I owe you an apology. I crossed my arms. Just one. Her face tightened, but she nodded. Fair. Probably more than one. She took a breath. I didn't see it. Not because it wasn't there, but because I didn't want to see it. Mason's always been loud. He takes up space. And you never asked for anything. You just did. You handled things. You showed up. I guess we started treating you like a safety net. Something we assumed would always be there. That's the thing about safety nets, I said. People only look at them when they're falling, never when they're climbing. Her lip trembled. She looked down at her hands. Your father and I were wrong. We let Mason get away with too much. We let him treat you like less.